Let me ask you something that, well, it might actually hit a little too close to home. Have you ever noticed how incredibly easy it is to be totally fired up on a Monday morning? You've got your coffee, you've got your new goals, and just this fresh energy. But then Thursday rolls around, what we like to call ThriveTime Thursday, and suddenly it feels like you've just slammed headfirst into a brick wall. All that excitement has literally evaporated, and you're left sitting there questioning if all this effort is even worth it. Look, you're definitely not alone in feeling that way. In fact, Thursday is the exact day when most founders' momentum just completely starts to fade. So, welcome to today's explainer. For the next few minutes, I want you to think of me as your executive advisor. We are going to strategically diagnose exactly why your progress stalls out right when you need it the absolute most, and more importantly, how we can mechanically fix it. We're diving into the physics of momentum and mastering the long game. And to do that, we have to completely stop treating your burnout as some sort of personal failure of motivation. Instead, we're going to start treating it as a technical failure, one that we can absolutely solve. Here's our executive agenda for today. First, we'll unpack the start-stop tax. Second, we'll look at the physics of momentum. Third, the stalled flywheel. Fourth, the daily step protocol. And finally, building a sovereign vision. Let's get right into it. Section 1, the start-stop tax. So what is this invisible drain on your business and honestly on your energy? Well, the start-stop tax is that crushing exhaustion that comes from constantly chasing what we call new project energy. You know the feeling. You get a great idea, but then you inevitably stall out when massive, immediate results don't miraculously show up by day 4. I want to be super clear about this right out of the gate. If you are stuck in this cycle, it is absolutely not a lack of willpower. It's really a systemic business disease. You get excited, you work furiously for a week, you don't see the needle move, and boom, you lose steam. You're constantly fighting for momentum and constantly losing it, and you're paying a massive tax on your time and your energy every single time you have to restart from zero. And here is exactly why that happens. The hardest part of literally any journey is the middle. Think about it. The beginning is incredibly fun because, well, it's novel. Your brain is actually flooded with these novelty dopamine hits, which makes all that initial effort feel almost effortless. And the end? The end is fun because it's over and you get the reward, the applause, the whole shebang. But the middle? Yeah, the middle is just work. It is unglamorous, repetitive, unmoving work. But the absolute crucial thing to understand here is that the middle is exactly where the momentum lives. If you can learn to stay in motion when that dopamine fades, you are definitely going to win the long game. Section 2, the physics of momentum. Okay, so we need to completely shift our perspective away from this idea of emotional motivation and start looking at the mechanical reality of how momentum actually operates. You see, we all tend to think of momentum as this sudden, explosive burst of speed, like a rocket taking off into space, right? We want that instant, spectacular launch. But the reality is far different. Real momentum in a business, or in your life for that matter, is way more like a massive, incredibly heavy flywheel. It takes a huge, almost unreasonable amount of effort just to get the thing to move a single inch. You aren't strapping into a rocket. You are literally pushing a giant block of iron. Section 3, the stalled flywheel. So what exactly happens when that massive wheel doesn't seem to be moving? Well, in the beginning, you're pushing with everything you've got and nothing seems to be happening. People might even be looking at you, wondering why you're working so incredibly hard for zero visible results. And guys, this is the exact stage where most people just give up because they think the wheel is stuck. But it's not stuck, it's just heavy. The real pivot happens when you have this realization. I stopped looking at the wheel and started looking at my hands. As a founder, looking at the wheel means you're obsessing over the lack of immediate results. Looking at your hands? That means committing to the push. It means focusing purely on your daily effort, totally regardless of the movement. Let's actually break down the mechanical phases of this flywheel because it's fascinating. Step 1 is where everyone quits. Pushing with absolutely no visible movement. Every single push feels like an agonizing grind. But if you keep looking at your hands, you start to realize that every push is making the next push just slightly easier. Then boom, step 2 happens. The weight that was once a total burden suddenly becomes your biggest asset. The sheer mass of the wheel starts to actually work for you. And finally, step 3, momentum takes over. The wheel starts turning on its own. You have literally built momentum out of nothing but sustained friction. How cool is that? Section 4, the daily step protocol. All right, to actually achieve that kind of unstoppable momentum, we need a system. The absolutely crucial point is this. Momentum is the reward for the person who simply refuses to stop when it gets hard. Momentum isn't something you just randomly find hiding under a rock. It is something you have to actively build. And how do we do that? By executing tiny, boring actions every single day. Don't even worry about how far you have left to go. Just focus entirely on the very next step. And once it's finally moving, you don't just stop pushing because it's rolling. No, you constantly add energy so it never slows down. This protocol right here, this is the primary architectural brick of a truly thriving identity. Let's look at how this completely changes your strategy. It really comes down to the difference between intensity of effort, the all-nighters, the frantic weekend sprints, the burning out by Thursday, and consistency of movement. Success in the long game isn't about the intensity of your effort. It is entirely about the consistency of your movement. A true long game player knows that a Thursday where you really don't feel like working is actually the most important day of the week. That is the day you prove to yourself that you're serious. You simply refuse to break the chain. Section 5. Building a sovereign vision. Here's the hard truth. You cannot build a majestic, sovereign vision on a fragile, shaky foundation of starts and stops. A true sovereign vision requires what we call purposeful priorities. So I want you to do a deep dive time on it this week. Literally pull up your calendar, look at where your hours are actually going, do your daily hours reflect your grand vision? Because if you are constantly chasing new project energy and just abandoning the old ones, your hours don't reflect a vision, they reflect a reaction. To build something truly sovereign, your daily calendar has to align perfectly with that slow, heavy push of the flywheel. I absolutely love this quote because it captures the essence of everything we've just discussed perfectly. A river cuts through rock, not because of its power, but because of its persistence. Think about it. A burst of power, like a flash flood, might make a huge mess, but it's not going to carve the Grand Canyon. It is the relentless, daily, unyielding consistency of the water over time that creates an unstoppable force. And that is exactly what you are doing with your daily boring actions. So if you are a founder who is just completely tired of paying the start-stop tax, if you are ready to stop waiting for motivation to miraculously strike and instead want to build real momentum through structured, relentless movement, well, you need the right framework. Mastering the long game is exactly what 365 Freedom is built for. It is the logical, necessary next step for anyone who is ready to create a daily rhythm that genuinely sustains long-term growth. I want to leave you with one final, provocative thought today. Are you ready to trade the exhausting, endless search for the big leap for the quiet, unstoppable certainty of the daily step? It's time to stop looking at the giant wheel and start looking at your hands. If you are really ready to get to work, check out the link to 365 Freedom. Commit to the push, and I promise you, that wheel will absolutely start to turn.